welcome to my comprehensive guide to approaching FL Studio as an absolute beginner and viewing things from a more beginner-friendly perspective so you can gain a better understanding of FL Studio and its tools so that you can be on your way to creating your first music or your first sort of beat or something. Now, I've been using FL Studio for well over 10 years now, whether that's producing, writing songs, recording musicians, or even in live situations. FL Studio has been a very powerful creative tool for myself and for many other musicians. For me, the workflow and adaptability has been so much easier than in other DAWs available, though I understand how overwhelming it can all be at first, and which is why I hope to make this video and make things a lot easier for you to understand. Hopefully by the end of this video, you will walk away having made your first sort of beat or just have a general better understanding of FL Studio. So let's jump into my computer and we'll have a look. So when you open FL Studio, you'll usually be greeted with this view here, which is sort of just a blank slate. We'll start with the menus because it's easier to understand that, like up in our very top left, we have our file, just our menus, and you can see sort of this box down here, this hint panel. If I hover over anything, it will tell me a quick description of that, whatever I am hovering over. So if you are ever lost and you need some sort of hint, this hint panel will always give you something of what you are hovering over. It'll give you an idea of what you're hovering over and you can figure it out. So we start with like file. You can save your project, you can export it to MP3 WAV file, you can create a new track with templates and all that. Edit, we have our copy and paste. Add, we can add plugins and VSTs. Patterns, we can add and go through our patterns. View, we have our view windows and how we want FL Studio to be displayed. Options, we have our MIDI settings, our audio settings, general settings, file settings, theme, and our general setup for project and stuff like that. We have our tools and our help. So if we go into our options, we have our MIDI, audio, general, file, theme, project, where we can do also time signatures, info about our project where we can put out our metadata, and then our general about screens. Over here we have our main volume and our pitch knob. I don't really touch these, but these can be automated and used for whatever. We have our, this is also called our transport panel. So we have our play, our stop, our record, and our tempo. If we want to change our tempo, we can click and drag and we can change it to whichever tempo we want it set. If we right click, we can tap our tempo. If we click the tap, we can get a good tap in there, or we can right click and we can choose our tempo or type in value and type in our specific tempo. You have this here, which is our song position if we have our song arranged in the playlist. You have our metronome over here, our wait for input to start, countdown before recording, scroll to reach time markers, typing keyboard to piano, roll, which is very useful if you want your physical keyboard to emulate a keyboard. We have step editing mode, enable note clips, and our multi-link controllers. We have our song position, our pattern modes. These are our monitors for our master and peak master, peak meter. We've got our CPU load and undo, open new audio editor, one-click audio recording, help, save, render, view project files, and launch content library. Over here, we have our snap grid, which is sort of these lines that you can see through FL on the playlist menu. We have our pattern, and if we scroll with our mouse wheel, we can scroll through patterns. If we left click and scroll up, we can scroll through patterns. If we click this plus, we can create a new pattern. If there is no pattern, there's no pattern in pattern 1, so it just is going to give me a pattern 1. If we have a pattern 1 and we click the plus, it'll create a new pattern, or we can scroll up to a new pattern, or we can click and drag up to a new pattern. We have in this toolbar here, we've got our playlist view, which is this view that you can see now. We have our piano roll, which is where we have our instruments and VSTs, and we arrange them into their obviously chord progressions and piano parts. We have what's called our channel rack, where all samples will be loaded, basically all VSTs, all samples, all automations kind of come in through the channel rack. And we'll go into a bit deeper through that later. We have our mixer, so all audio is routed into what's called our mixer tracks, and then they all come out. You can kind of see there's a little arrow. If we go through our mixer line, you can kind of see there's a little arrow here, then it comes up through the master. So all channels route through our master channel, which comes out of the audio that we hear. Obviously you can make subgroups and all this other stuff. So we've got our mixer, we have our browser menu, which is this one on the very left. If it's not on the left, you can click and drag from the left. Oh, that did not work. You can click and drag from the left sometimes, and it won't work, so I've got the mixer open. Yep, it won't work for me, so I want to press this button here, and that will show me that the browser is there, and we know that the browser is there. We have our plugin picker and another plugin picker. We have our metronome tapper and our view touch controller. So I don't really use these last four ones, and obviously our online menu. But anyway, so let's go back to our playlist mode, which is this first toolbar box. And let's start with actually dragging and dropping stuff into our playlist and arranging some patterns to produce our first sort of, let's start with like a drum beat, right? So what you would do is if my browser is not there and I'm just in my playlist view, I'll click my browser and we'll bring it up. It will probably look like this when you first open it. Okay, so where do we go? Let's try and go through packs. Oh, sweet, look, we've got some drums, we've got some instruments, some loops, some vocals. So let's go with drums, we'll go with a kick, and we can press our samples to listen to our kicks. Listen to the samples until we find a sample that we want. Let's go with this Groove Kick Acoustic 2. Now, I want this in my playlist. So how do I do that? We can just drag and drop into the playlist. But that's really small. How do I zoom in on that? Well, we can see that we've placed it here along our timeline, and it's sort of on the 7. So where these numbers are, if we hover over the numbers and we scroll up or down on our mouse wheel, that's how we can zoom into that section of the song. Over by 16, it will zoom over by 16. Over by 7, it will zoom over by 7. If we hold control and we click, we can like box select items that are in our playlist. Let me zoom out because I don't want it at the 7. I want to select. We'll zoom in, I'll drag over, and we can kind of just hover over our sample like that. Left click and drag, and we can bring it all the way to 1. Cool, so now we've got the kick in our playlist, and we've got another one there, and we've got another one there. I don't want this second one here. How do I delete that? Okay, well, it's clicked in there. Heck, now I've got way too many. What do I do? Well, over here, we have our toolbar options. We have our snap to grid, which is where we can choose to have it on the lines or off the lines or to a specific step. We have our pencil tool, which is just a singular place. Our paintbrush tool, which is like, if you click and you drag, it's just gonna place the sample in any next free grid spot. We have our delete. So delete is obviously you click it and it literally does that. It just deletes the sample. You have the next one over is mute. So we can mute the samples, which is very handy for some things. We have a slip option, which is if we want to slip through the sample. So let's choose this very end one. If we want to slip through the sample, we can go through, click and drag, and maybe we just want to play the tail of that sample there or something. We have our slicer tool, which is obviously just a slicer tool. If we left click and slice that sample, it's going to cut it in half. If we right click and slice that sample, it's going to cut the shortest half of that sample. And if we hold, and then obviously the next one is box select, and we've got zoom, which I'm not going to zoom in. Or let's zoom in just in case we've done that. Oh heck, how do I go back? Why is it so zoomed in? Okay, over very far on this right over here, you've got like our browser bar, and then you've got this little one here. If you middle mouse click in there, it's going to reset your view. Middle mouse click is kind of your reset for everything. It's gonna reset any value that you mess up. If you middle mouse click, it's gonna reset it back to its default value. Okay, so we've got too many samples in here. How do I delete them? Let me pick my pencil or my paintbrush tool, and we can right click on our mouse to delete our samples. So I'm gonna delete all of those. We've just got our 2 kicks that we want. Now I want to listen to them in the playlist. Well, how do I do that? We can go up to our transport panel, change it from pattern mode to song mode. And then if we press spacebar or play, nice, cool. So it's actually playing our samples that we dropped in our playlist, but it's not playing it right to the end of the measure. So why is that? It's because it's a sample, so it's not a pattern, and the sample's ending there. And there's nothing else in there, so technically the song ends here. So it's just going to stop and go back to the start. If I want to loop that measure so it plays that, and I can think of other samples to play, I can right click over by this too, create like a loop like that, and we can go. Cool, and then that's going to loop it from like that. But I don't like building drums like this, so let's delete all this. And I'm going to delete my selection by either going over here, select, and click deselect, or I'm going to, where I right clicked to create my selection, I'm going to right click and take away my selection. I'm also going to delete these samples, and I can see that I still have my sample here. If I right click it, I can delete it, or I can drop it back in, and we know that that's our audio sample that we clicked. Look, if I click this in, because I've slipped it, it's playing the tail end of the sample. I don't want that, so let's quickly click the slip button, click our sample, drag it back to how it was. We can delete it. We'll delete this one too, but it's actually also in the channel rack in audio, but we won't worry about that too much right now. Let's delete that. We'll go into our channel rack, and this is our channel rack. So our channel rack is our third little bar up here, and you can see on our channel rack we're given 4 instruments to start with. If we start with a basic template, it says 1, 2, 3, 4 over here. Well, what does that mean? Those are our mixer inserts. So in our channel rack, we have all of these too, which is called our step sequencer, our mixer inserts. Over here on our left side, we have our pan, and over here we have our volume of this sample. And so let me go into our channel rack. If we're in pattern 1, I'm going to place down a pattern like this, and if I press play and it's in song mode, it's not going to play my pattern. Well, what's going on? Well, one, we could click pattern up here, go back into our playlist and drop the pattern in, and then we've got it in song mode arranged in our playlist. Or if we just want to hear the pattern, we can change it from song mode to pattern mode. Come in here and in our channel rack again, and now I press this little speaker, but it's the same as if you press spacebar or play. This is just basically a play or pause button. And so if I press spacebar, you can see that this pattern that I drew is playing. And now you can see it says 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's in our mixer. So if I go into our mixer and I press play, you can see that our kick drum on insert 1 is playing, and you can see it's coming out of the master, which is great. Okay. Awesome. So now what? So once we've got our first pattern in our channel rack, we want to start arranging this into a song. So then we go into our playlist. We know we've got a pattern on pattern 1, which is up here, or it's on the side over here and selected. So I've got an audio panel or a pattern panel. I know we created a pattern, so it's in the pattern panel. I want to click and drag this in here. Let's bring it all the way to the edge. Cool. We have two samples or two patterns of the same pattern, but I want to change it up. So I can do this a couple ways. I can press the plus button and it'll create a new pattern. I can duplicate this one, so I can click another one. I can click this little left bit over here and it shows me a whole bunch of stuff. If I make unique, it will copy the pattern, but it will make it a completely new pattern. So it's still the kick drum, but it's now pattern 2, as you can see. So if I double click on this, it'll open the piano roll and I can play with it in the piano roll. I'm not going to do that. If I click this pattern, then open the channel rack, there we go. Now this is pattern 2. We know it's pattern 2 because it's selected there and it says pattern 2 there. So let's add in a clap. We'll do a clap there, a clap there, we'll do a hi-hat there, a hi-hat there, a hi-hat there, and a hi-hat there. Cool. When we go back into our playlist mode, we can see we've got pattern 1, pattern 2, and pattern 3, and we've got more nubs here. So let's duplicate pattern 2, we'll change it to song mode, so we know that we're in song mode, and we'll press play to give our pattern 1 and pattern 2 a listen. Cool, and so hopefully this is going to be sort of you discovering that you're on your way to making your first beat. If we go back into our channel rack, we can see 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, as I said before, those are in our mixer. If I open up our mixer, which is these two little faders, we can see, when I press play, we've got our kick in here. If I make this big by maximizing it, I'm just going to play pattern 2. We can see that we've got our kick drum here on pattern 1, our snare and clap here on pattern 2, or just a clap for this one, and our hi-hat here on pattern 3. I know that that's that because it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we can leave it like that for now. I'll do another video on a mixer. Cool. And so if I want to ever so slightly change this up in my channel rack, I could play with the volume. I could play with the pan, and I'll show you that now actually. So if I pan these hi-hats, I bring this first knob to the left, I can see up in my top left hint panel that I have now panned it 41% to the left, and that's on the hi-hat. So if I play the hi-hat, I know that it's playing out my left ear. Cool. We're starting to get some stereo stuff happening in our songs now. If I wanted to play with velocity of this, you can come over here in your channel rack, which is these little graphs here, and this is your graph editor. When it opens up, you have this, your pitch, velocity, release velocity, fine pitch, and all your various mods and stuff like that, which we haven't set. But if I come with velocity, let's say I open, let's close it, and let's say I select, making sure this green box is selecting my hi-hat. That's how we know that that sample is selected, when this green box is around that thing. We open up our graph editor and we see that it's on velocity, and I want to pull that one down and that one down, and this is just the volume of the hi-hats without having to change the master volume of that hi-hat or the volume in the mixer. And then when I play it, it sounds like this. Cool. And without even adding anything in the mixer, you've got, and if I put it in song mode, you've got pattern 1, pattern 2. You already are on your way to making your first song, right? Without anything in the mixer, which is awesome. If I want to quickly add an instrument in here before we finish this tutorial up, we can come back into our channel rack. We can see that we only have our drums. We can click this plus here, and this will add in a VST, or a VST of your choosing. Or we can click add, and then it'll show us our VSTs up here. For the sake of the tutorial, I'll do both. So we'll go this plus here, we will add a plucked, and as long as this typing to keyboard is selected, you can basically play your computer keys with this green box selected you can play how it would be in on keys. So I'm going to delete that and do it the other way. So that was pressing plus, finding the VST that we wanted, and then clicking it. Or you can go up to the top, add, finding our VST, clicking it. And if I exit that all and we play the song, our green box is selected around our VST, we can start playing around with stuff and making some sounds. You know, and that's really cool, but how do I actually place those notes in there to make that? Okay, well, it's similar to our beat, our drum pattern. So we made our drum pattern, we've got our pattern 1, our pattern 2, we need a pattern 3. We can press this plus, and that's got a pattern 3. On our sound that we just added in our channel rack, if we right click and we click piano roll, it'll open the piano roll. Or with the instrument selected, if we click in our toolbar up here, view piano roll, it'll open the piano roll for that instrument. And now you're greeted with these keys. Oh gosh, what do we do? Music theory, scary, for sure. But anyway, if you left click and drag, you can kind of just make patterns, and it's the same as the playlist mode, exactly the same as playlist mode. You've got your tools, your snap to grid, you've got your paintbrush, your delete tools, your slice, you've got paint and drum sequencer mode, which is a new one. You've got snap to scale, which I can set if I press this little drop down menu. I can choose these chords, which is stamping and scales as well. And if I click that snap to the scale, you can kind of cheat music theory if I was to do that, but that's not why we're here. We've opened the piano roll, we've placed in our pattern, we go back into our channel rack, we can see that it's in there. If we go pattern mode, cool. Let's arrange that in our song. So it's in pattern 3. Let's go into our playlist, make sure we have our pattern 3 selected, which is on our side here. We've got pattern 3 selected. Awesome. Now let's place it in our playlist. Let's go, we'll pull it over here for the sake of building a song, and it's super repetitive, and what I will do is hold control, hold left click to box select, control C, control V is copy and paste, and you can then see that my selection is red, and I can click and drag that over, and I can drag it over. Or if I control click box select my drum pattern, control B, then it just duplicates it to the next empty spot. Boom. And so I can fill out my song. So I very rapidly did that. I'll press song mode, and this is what it sounds like. Awesome. And I think that is a good sort of start anyway, and this would hopefully have opened your eyes to a few more of the basic concepts of actually getting used to FL Studio, making your first drum pattern, setting your tempo, creating your other patterns, arranging them into the playlist, and sort of seeing where you can go from that. I hope that I could explain this easy and well for people, and yeah, I hope to see you guys on the next future video. Please subscribe, please like if this did help you out, and let me know what else you would like to see. Thank you very much.